Okay, so how to fix team conflict? Well, according to a recent YouGov survey commissioned by the CIPD, and I don't often go to these websites, but actually a colleague, it was Wendy who alerted us to it. According to that survey, and I think it came out a couple of months ago, we're actually, as leadership in general in this country, we're not really good at handling problems as they emerge in our teams. Somewhere along the line, 36% of the people who report into us become dissatisfied enough to regard themselves to be in conflict with their bosses. Now, it's not just bosses who are messing up in this respect, at least 36% of the time, but actually there is also an equal number, an equal proportion of the sample group, 36% again, reporting that they have problems, interpersonal problems, conflict problems with their colleagues. So whichever way you look at it, whether you're looking at this from the boss's point of view, you are a boss, you have a team, or you're looking across at your colleagues and saying, actually, we don't always get on terribly well. Maybe you might with the vast majority, but there are one or two key people in your extended team who you think, actually, this isn't really working. This is really hard work. Then this webinar is what it's all about. So what I'm going to be looking at particularly this morning is the following areas, and I've tried to keep it very specific, and hopefully you can take something genuine, something real, something practical away with you that you can actually try out. And when you do, let us know that you've done it. But initially, or actually what I'm going to be looking at this morning is the spark. How do these things spark off? I'm going to be looking at how you can end these situations, how you can very quickly move on a conflict or a relationship that's not going great just in the course of one or two conversations. And then, of course, I want to look at prevention, how to minimize the chances, particularly as someone who is leading a team at any level in an organization, how you can minimize the re-emergence of conflict. Now, we're never going to get this to zero. And in fact, I believe that conflict is a very positive thing. But hopefully, in the space of the next 30 minutes, we can together build up a picture of the sort of conflict that's useful versus the sort of conflict that really leads to feelings of discomfort and people just not wanting to turn up to work. Okay, so the format today, let me just tell you how it's going to go so you know what to expect. So firstly, we're going to have about 30 minutes, 35 minutes from me of input. And then we're going to start off with a poll, in fact, then 35 minutes of input, then another poll, and then Q&A, as I said before. Okay, so firstly, let's kick off with a poll. Here's the first poll, and what I want to ask you is a sort of before and after question. And the question is, or rather it's a statement that I want you to react to. So the statement is, when I have a substantial disagreement with one of my team, I know what to do. So no, I tend to hunker down and wait for it to sort itself out. Not really, I just try not to make it worse. Or I'm getting better, but I'm just feeling my way. Or I do sort of have an approach and it seems to work okay. Or yes, I have a successful approach for handling these things. Where are you right now in your ability, do you think, to handle conflict? And here we go. So the vast majority of you sort of have an approach and it seems to work okay. So very few of you hunker down, but still is 4%. And the second sort of most popular response was, I'm getting better, but I'm just feeling my way. So you're using your intuition. Okay, so that's our start point for this morning. So firstly, what I want to talk about is what I think are three really important areas of sparks for conflict, things that are guaranteed to get things going. So if you want to get a really good fire going between you and one of your team or one of your colleagues, here's how to do it. The first thing that you absolutely must do if you want to start a conflict is to start to make assumptions. And this is something that I came across when I was talking to somebody last week on one of our projects. And there is a highly intelligent group of people who make a lot of assumptions about each other. Now, interestingly, the assumptions are extremely, in one way, flattering. What they assume, and what these people are assuming, is that the behaviour of their adversaries, as they see them, is purposeful, that they are being purposefully obstructive. So they're also thinking that the people involved have a choice and that they know exactly what they're doing. So they're giving them this almost superhuman skills. And actually when they're not considering is the fact that maybe these people aren't actually doing this behavior on purpose, but they're actually doing their best, but very badly indeed. So the problem with making these sorts of assumptions is that we think that everybody's out to get us, that they're actually doing it on purpose, but they're not. So that's the first thing. These people aren't actually as bad as we think they are. And that's really important to recognize, because if we start telling stories about people and making them out to be superheroes when actually they're just they're sort of doing the proverbial red nose behaviors, then we begin to believe stuff about them and their skills that just make it even worse. So that's the first thing. Mostly people are just as flummoxed and as helpless as we are. All right, so here is the second of the three key sparks. Now, obviously, it's rather perverse to say if you really want to start a fight, but here's the thing that happens. We tend to reject the other person's point of view. We build up a virtual reality about how they think, about their thinking being wrong-headed. We either reject it because it doesn't match our own, and of course, if we accept somebody's thinking, or some of us believe that even if we listen to it, it necessarily means that we have to change our minds. So what we do is we blank it out. The second thing is that if it doesn't suit us, we get frightened because we may start to believe that the other person is going to win. And if we're unable or unwilling to change our own views, the thought of the other person overcoming us or winning is terrible, because if they win, necessarily we must lose. So what I say to people, and what I'm challenging you with this morning, is if you're in this position where you are tussling with somebody and you just don't want to accept, or you don't want to agree, more to the point, then what I say to you is you actually don't need to agree at all. But what you do need to do is to see something, is to see it from their point of view, to accept their view without needing to agree. So that's the realization for the second spark. Okay, now let's go to the third of the sparks. And this is clues. This is all about the stuff that is there in front of us. But because we've got our virtual reality glasses on, we don't want to see it. Now, we have all of us very sensitive. Human beings are incredibly clever at picking up clues, flavours, nuances, tones of voice, looks that flash across people's faces very quickly indeed. But sometimes it is desperately inconvenient, indeed even frightening. So what we do, one of the sparks for conflict, is and the way we handle it, is to kind of pretend to pay attention, but then we play down the issues because they're inconvenient. They get in our way. They maybe threaten to slow something down or to dilute one of our ideas. So we play down the issues, we make them seem small, and we try and explain it, sometimes ever so nicely, to the other people involved. We explain away their concerns because we just want them to get over it. And sometimes we will just say, out of frustration, "Oh, please, just get over it. Trust me, it'll be okay." And there are lots of ways to do that. And some of us can make it feel, or sound at least, very positive. But the other thing that we do within this third spark, apart from avoiding clues, apart from trying to dissuade people from what they think or how they feel, we actually also use the weapon of stereotyping. And I've come across this, a lot on projects, particularly amongst people who know each other really well, or they think they do. They'll say, "Well, that's just John. He would say that," or "Jane's always like that. Get used to it." So we use our knowledge of people to put a certain quality, and let's call it intransigence or stubbornness. And so what it allows us to do is to not change. By stereotyping the other person, we can say to ourselves, "Well, I'm all right. I'm still thinking straight. I'm trying to do the right thing. It's him who's got a problem. He's the one who needs to change his mind." So this piece about the sparks, and in particular here, missing or avoiding clues, or giving ourselves the excuse that we don't have to pay attention to the other person, is all part of sparking off conflict. We don't have to shout. We don't have to be nasty. We just have to have these attitudes and thoughts in our heads for conflict to be sparked off. In this particular case, when we are at our most frightened of losing control, actually what we can imagine, and maybe a helpful thought that we can have, is that we don't actually have to fix everything. We can just fix a little piece of the whole picture. It's up to the other person involved and the other people involved to help with the fix. They don't actually have that expectation of us. So trying to keep the whole world as it is, or to fix the entire problem, is really the driver behind these three sparks. Is the fact that if we can't have it our way, we think that we're going to lose. Okay. So that's the negative stuff. That's how we start things off. We make assumptions, we reject people's views, and we miss or avoid clues because we can't be doing with it. We can't get stuck there, or we don't think we can. Okay, let's get on to the more positive side of the coin now, onto the remedies. Now, this is the stuff. I made the promise in the invitations for this webinar, and I make the promise now that these are things that only take minutes, albeit over a number of days, to do. But my conviction is, and what I say to you, is that I have seen so many times in the last 25 years, situations and relationships turn around extremely quickly when the people involved, once they had decided that it was worth doing something about it, and B, they actually had the guts and the presence of mind to do something, maybe to do the thing that they least felt like doing. So here are just 3 things I'm going to suggest that you play around with, and please don't take my word for it, but these are things to play with so that you can get something back on track, whether it's a big deal or just a little niggle that's starting to really start to grind with you. So all of these three ingredients that I'm going to talk to you about now stand in their own right, but administered together, they have the strength to really turn a very bad situation around very quickly. So, firstly, number one remedy is ditch the content. Now, what do I mean by this? Well, most conversations or most situations that are going wrong are spoken about at this level up here. Now, what this is this up here is just noise. So this is about facts, issues, things, systems. So all the stuff that is down on paper, the things that get spoken about in the inflammatory email. So we could say that's on the surface. But then there are things that are going on behind that, the real things. But what we do with these issues up here is we recycle them. We recycle these things because they are socially acceptable, because they're okay things to talk about. I can complain about my frustration with the IT system. I can complain about someone's lack of productivity. And I sound like a manager. But actually, very often the things that we start an argument about really aren't the things at all. And the really real stuff never gets mentioned. I've got some examples here for you. So the first, I pick at your work, but it's really about your attitude. I withhold praise, but it's your work style that annoys me. I micromanage you, but it's my productivity that I'm worried about. And these are all things that I have come across in the last few weeks, in fact. I had a conversation with an executive about one of her people who I'd been coaching, and I was getting a completely different picture to what she was getting. And so one of us was really out of focus. And actually, it was the fact that she didn't like this person's attitude. The fact that they'd been very ill, entangling with a lot of home issues. It just didn't sit right with the manager. The manager thought that this person should be turning up at 110% just because the organisation was having problems. There's someone I have in mind who withholds praise. Now, she's a lovely person. She's a CFO of an organisation. But actually, the person that she doesn't praise is somebody who desperately needs it. And he is an incredibly bright bloke. He's her assistant, and he is just in wheel spin. His brain is just going too fast. And of course, we know what happens. It creates trouble. And micromanaging is an old one, often done by managers or leaders because they're worried that if they don't turn something out, if they're not seen to produce something by their own executive, by their own leader, they might look rather redundant. And that's the problem a lot of executives and aspiring executives has, is giving tasks away because they think, what am I going to do? So the first thing we have to do is to ditch the content, is to actually be honest about what we're really talking about here. And it's not this surface stuff up here, but it's really paying attention to what's going on underneath. So when you're talking to one of your peers or you're talking to one of your people and you're hearing some stuff and you're thinking, that just doesn't sound big enough, it can't be, you maybe need to start ignoring that and digging a bit deeper. So, and I'm going to now suggest where you dig. So if you've been hanging around me for anything more than the last 20 minutes, you will know, and you will not be surprised for me to say that you need to focus on feelings. The feelings that somebody has in a conflict are the entry point, are the key to the lock that will help us to understand where the fuel for the conflict is coming from. As soon as we start to pay attention to the source of the fuel, we can not necessarily turn the tap off, but we can actually show the person that we're paying attention to the right stuff. Not the noisy content anymore, but the actual underlying bad feeling. And this is how to do it. Now, I'm going to give you a 1-minute crash course in empathic listening. When we run programs either in-house or externally, as we did last month for 6 people, we spend a day on empathic listening, and it's actually practiced across 2 days. So you're going to get a very quick version right now. When we're listening to somebody, and most of us do hear stuff, and as I've explained before earlier on this morning, we do pick up lots of clues. We're really, really clever. Human beings are brilliant animals. Most of the time, however, we don't use the data that we pick up, and that's what I'm asking you to do with this. So I'm asking you to get into the habit of picking up 3 bits of data. And these 3 bits of data are changing constantly in a dynamic conversation. Every few seconds even, something new will turn up. So it's a bit like running on a treadmill. You do have to put a bit of effort in to keep going, but it's really, really worth it. This is the big one for me. The first piece of data or type of data you need to look out for is how they feel. Are they annoyed? Are they disappointed? Are they worried? And this comes out in statements like, you seem, you sound. And that's a natural way to start the sentence off if you're not used to doing this. So firstly, how is he feeling? How is she feeling right now? Annoyed, frustrated with me? What is going on for them? The second thing, and I've just leaked onto that, is what about? What is that feeling that they're having about? Now, we need to be really cute and specific here. What is this really about? It can't be about what they're talking about. It's not that, they're unhappy with everything. Have I picked any clues up about what it's really about? Is it the fact that I haven't paid attention? Is it the fact that I haven't used their idea before? Is it the fact that we haven't even had a one-to-one for 3 months? People will always tell us because they want us to understand. All we have to do is to listen. The third bit of data you need to pick up, if you can, is why. Now, this bit is really a work of your imagination, your intuition, and your life experience. Why are they feeling like this about that thing? How they feel, what about, and why? Let me give you some running examples. Straight off the top of my head, I'm just making these up. John, you seem, I'm just going to tick these off as I do them so that you can really see the steps in action. You seem worried about taking on that IT project. I guess that's because you've never done a project completely on your own. Jane, you seem annoyed with me for raising the issue of your timekeeping again. I guess that's because you think I'm making a big deal out of nothing. Ed, you seem really aggravated that I'm not giving up with my idea of capping budgets. I guess that's because you think that's going to, well, it sounds like it's because you think that's going to really make things grind to a standstill at the wrong moment. You'll notice in each case at the end I paused. It's essential that after we've done our little bit of hypothesizing, we've offered them our thoughts, our best guess, then we stay quiet to let the other person come back and say, yeah, absolutely, it's exactly right. Or, no, it's not about that, Paul, it's about this. Or, no, I'm not feeling frustrated, I'm annoyed. Or, no, I'm not that frustrated, I'm just disappointed. So this toing and froing, and you can imagine that this piece of the conversation happens a number of times, is administered like a remedy a number of times, actually helps both people to get on the same page. The really important bit, though, is that we can't wear our virtual reality glasses while we're doing this. In fact, we gain a real reality. And the other person can see us doing it. And that's the magic of it. Even if we're not right with our hypotheses, they can see that we're actually trying. Here's the third remedy, and this is probably the most surprising one of all. Avoid thought. I need to explain this. Having decided that we're going to listen, and simply understand what lies behind the noisy content, that also releases us from evaluating and thinking ahead. And in fact, if we are listening to somebody, we have to stay with them. We stay with their thoughts, not ours. So even just for a few minutes, we need to really give our brains a rest, give our brains a holiday, or at least the bit that is actually critically churning out things like, well, I'll tell you what it looks like when somebody's thinking. They come up with solutions. They come up with ideas. We always, first and foremost, come up with questions. And we think, well, I am listening because my question was about what you were just talking about. Actually, that's not good enough. And you know why? It's because you've told me something and I ask you a question, what I'm really saying to you is, I might not have listened to that last bit, and it probably wasn't the right bit anyway. I'm more interested in this thing over here. So asking questions is not a clue that listening has occurred. Next steps is another favourite one. I see people who are trying to listen then go on to next steps within a few minutes because they want to push things on, because they think they've done enough listening. Actually, they really, really haven't. So give your brain a rest and use your mind instead to pay attention, to interpret what's going on for the other person. Okay, so those are the three remedies. And now I want to finish off with this morning by looking at how to prevent reignition. The first thing I'd say, and this is cutting back to a thought that I just shared with you, is about listening. It's taking listening seriously and taking it as a leadership quality, not just as a tool. Now, you may recognize the image here, and I chose this really carefully. It was extremely difficult to track down, interestingly. But if you're roughly my age, I don't know, anywhere between 40 and 50, 55, you'll recognize this as the Ready Brek boy. Now, this was probably going out on TV around about in the 1970s, late 70s, early 80s. The reason I chose this image is because what he's done is his mummy has given him a special breakfast cereal which the poor other swine coming over the bridge in the opposite direction has obviously not received. He's had something with cold milk, but our Ready Brek kid has had Ready Brek, and it's given him this inner glow. He carries it around with him all day. That's how I feel about listening. It's not a management skill. It's not a leadership trick. I really think we have to believe that it's the right thing to do. It has to be part of us, really more of as an attitude than something that we switch on and off when it's convenient to us. Often listening is a deeply inconvenient thing to do, but as soon as we can get our heads into it, it just all starts to make sense because the other person in front of us in the conflict starts to behave in a completely different way within a few moments. It's that quick. But it has to be this inner glow, this drive to understand. And if you can wake that up in yourself at the right moments, conflict will simply dissolve. There is no room for conflict where people understand each other. It cannot exist. So there's the first thing. The second thing is make it easy for people to disagree with you. Now, I've put this rather disgusting image up because you might not like what comes out of the Q&A session, or you saying, come on guys, tell me what you're really thinking. Now, you're lucky if you get a load of verbal back because it means that they trusted your invitation. And if you just remember that it's not up to you to sort this out, to clean up the water, to stem the flow, quite the reverse. You desperately need to know what the other people are thinking. All you have to do is to listen, and the solutions will emerge between both people or both parties, both groups. It's a brave thing to do to stand still when you see a whole load of stuff coming at you, to stand still and to open your mind, to open your eyes, to open your heart in a way and say, forget my feelings just for a few moments. What's happening to the other person that they need to speak like this, that they're behaving in the way that they are? You don't need an answer for everything. In fact, I'll be even more bold. I'll say you don't need an answer for anything. Not at this time. They will tell you when the answers are required, and by then it will be obvious to you and the other person already. Leave your brain on holiday. And then, having done all this, we can afford, if we've started to get ourselves into this way of thinking, when it comes to making something happen in our teams, here's the third sort of way of preventing reignition. It's to actually involve people in what we're trying to do, whether you're at the top of an organization, or you have 3 people or 25 or 70. It's actually getting people involved very much earlier on than is traditional. And even now, I see organizations who are just not getting their people involved enough and early enough. And so I think the sooner, after you've had the initial ideas, the quicker you involve the people who you're trying to invigorate into doing something, whose ways you're trying to change. Maybe you're breaking up a department. Maybe you're moving people across territories. Maybe you're getting somebody to do something that they don't want to do, or a whole group of people. The sooner in your scheming and plotting that they're involved, the more that they will feel in control, that they have some sort of handle on their own destiny. And that goes for whether you're trying to institute a process or whether you're trying to sort out a piece of conflict with somebody. Getting people involved early on shows them respect, it shows them that they are operating as an equal, and they will then live up to that. They will step up. Okay, so finally, a summary. For me, it's all about the feelings and not the content. If you focus on the feelings, conflicts will disappear really, really quickly. Content for me is just the noise. It's the excuses, it's the old territory that we use to cover up the conversation that we really need to have. Work on the basis of a real reality, not the one that you have in your head because it's convenient or because it feels safe. You might be able to carry on quite well by yourself, but you're never going to pull somebody around who you're having a tussle with, or a group of people that you've fallen out with, or there is a danger that you've isolated yourself from. And lastly, this business of listening, I think it's something that happens across many days, across many occasions. It's a lot of very small but significant moments of truth where you make something small and vitally important happen, so that you lose count, so that actually it just becomes a daily, even hourly occurrence that you pay attention to people. Okay, so that's what I have for you. It would be great. I'm just going to hear and see some thoughts. Anything you'd like to ask me via the Q&A pane, or if you want to, you can put your hand up, and I will do my best to answer your question, or at least, at the very least, you can guarantee that I will listen to you. So I'm just looking to see if anybody wants to finish off today and has their hand up. Okay, Kate has a hand up. Kate, can we free Kate's line up, or can I? Maybe I can. Here we go. There we go.
Hello.
Hi, Kate.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
I raised my hand because I had a couple of thoughts just as you were going through, and I wanted to say how true it was about the micromanagement point, and I think that's behind what a lot of managers I see in my place, and including myself, actually do, because we're being encouraged more and more to be a manager in the true sense of the word, which is about enhancing team performance. But in reality, I think everybody's insecure that they're not actually the one leading on the project, because then what are they really doing? They have to be quite selfless. And I think that actually brings out a lot of insecurity, and then the unhelpful behaviours start. So I don't know what the answer to that is, because I think a lot of people at the top of organisations, although they may, talk the talk about we want you to be not necessarily the technical expert, management is a skill, when it comes to it, they'll still pick out the rising stars who are actually doing the work.
And who are making the right noises, who have tangible evidence of what they've been doing during the year.
Yeah, tangible evidence is the big thing, without doubt. And I don't know what the answer to that is, because I see it myself and I'm starting to do it, and I don't like myself for it, because I'm far more interested in making sure my team perform. But if I'm going to do that properly, I can't do it properly without then doing something myself.
Yes, and you need to feel reassured that your efforts, your rather intangible efforts, which produce some fantastic work through other people, are going to be recognised and taken seriously.
Yes, and it never is. I mean, I've just led on another project where I've taken it right through from idea to delivery yesterday, culminating in showing a video all about organisational values, and they're immediately praising the technical team that put the video together. And I'm thinking,
because
oh my
they can
God.
see it.
Yes, it's just like, I am never going to get any credit for anything, because it's always the tangible stuff you're looking at, never the person that ran with the idea.
So here's a thought, Kate, and it's a bit like any evaluation, isn't it? People years ago, when we first started moving from training to the mushier stuff, the behavioral stuff, which is where coaching emerged, somewhere between training and therapy. What we started to do is to start to think, well, how can I evaluate this? How do I know that it's actually going to work? So some organizations started getting a lot cleverer about talking about behavior rather than output. Because if you say, well, I'm going to do this report, or I'm going to produce this piece of organizational change, if Kate's invisible, and it's happened, she's really done her job. So maybe we need to, when we sit down at the beginning of the year to set targets, and we're not that far away from the beginning of the year, so there's still time to rewind, it's to go in and say, look, the targets that have been set here are very tangible, and yet you want me to not be the one to execute. And in fact, at my position, I shouldn't be executing hands-on. So I want to add some other things here, which are about how I behave and how I help other people to do their stuff.
Yeah, I mean, in fact, that was the ironic thing is that was the whole content of what I've done with this project, which is about values, which is absolutely about behaviours. And all of those values were displayed in what I'd done, putting that whole thing together. And they buy into them on the surface, but then when it comes to it, they're going against them, the senior managers, the leader of the council, etc., by saying it's the video that we're praising. So I don't know how you go about changing their perceptions.
Kate, you strike me as being, I don't know you very well at all, but you've been on a few webinars and we've had some conversations. You strike me as being a very determined lady. So what I would suggest is actually listening to them as we have been talking about this morning, and trying to, and empathizing with them. Dave, you seem to have been very impressed with the video. Oh yes, it was wonderful, Kate. That was a great piece of work by the technical team. And then just keep on paying attention to him, and maybe even ask him, dare I say it, well, do you know what else happened behind that video, or are you curious, or I'd like to tell you about what else happened to make that work. And I think there's a re-education thing, but it's going to take quite a few goes at it, and this business about paying attention to the other person over a long period of time, I think, is really important for these situations where we have to persist. And you sound like the sort of person who would do that.
I'll keep going. Yes, thank you.
Okay, I'm aware it's 10:16, and I'm in danger of going against my premise. So I just want to share the second poll just before we wrap up. If there are more questions, I'm definitely going to come back to them. So here's the second poll. And the final poll: when I have a substantial disagreement with one of my team, I know what to do. Where are you right now on that? How can you vote now. And here are the results. So, wonderful. At least, 50% of you now have an approach that you'd like to try out. Fantastic. And Matt's hopefully going to come hurtling through with the results as they were before so that I can compare, because I can't for the life of me. Here he is. Okay, so we went 4% at the bottom there, went to 0. 14% went to 5. We were 21%. I'm a little more confident, but I still didn't feel. So the middle one was 21 is down to 9. 50% of that actually stayed the same, but we've got a lot more people saying, yes, I think now I have an approach. For those of you staying, I'm just having a look to see if there are any more hands up. Okay, I can see Jackie, you have your hand up. Would you like to? Is that a question? Hello there.
Hi.
I can hear you loud and clear.
Good. It was a comment really, and it was, we've talked before, and I've talked with Matt about the feelings bit, which is so important. And from Kate's side, I don't know the organisation, but if it was me, I would go and tell them how I felt, because they may not realise that Kate is unhappy, and clearly she is, and I understand why. But she will carry that, and it will eat away, and they may not even realise it. And if she goes and tells them, they can sort of go, "Hey, I thought you understood. I thought it was great," or something like that.
Yes, I absolutely support what you say. Definitely. So if Kate's she's still around, yeah, go and tell them how you feel, Kate. That's a good one. Definitely. Okay, so one here from Tim. Is it okay to get cross with people? Okay. Is it okay? It's okay to be cross. Number one, yes. That's the first thing. It's okay to be cross. What we do need to do, though, is if it's preferential, or it's preferable. There we go, preferential. Preferable, if you are going to get cross, then to explain your feeling. As Jackie said, it's about showing people we're cross. It happens. We're human beings. But the quicker we can actually explain what we're cross about and why, then the other person can understand us. But this whole business about whether we ought to be having, which I'm reading behind your question, Tim, ought I to be having those sorts of feelings? It's not a question of ought, it's a question of reality. You're a human being, and if you can use your intellect to explain what's going on with you, then people will get you and will respect you for that. Hopefully that is good enough. Hugh said, as conflict cannot exist where there is understanding, then it follows that the leadership challenge is about creating understanding and the spaces in the business of doing such conversations. Absolutely right. That is totally what it's about. And giving and letting people know that there doesn't have to be a big reason to have a real conversation, to say something positive or negative, either saying or receiving a thank you. And having those conversations as soon as possible, as well as possible, is a fantastic factory for ideas as well. So thank you for that one, Moss. Hugh Moss. I'm just quickly checking that nothing else. There was another input here. It was yes, it was about when the sludge comes out at the end of the pipe. In my place, they would ask me what I'm going to do about this. The sludge coming out would lead them to say, come on, what are you going to do about all that then? What do I say? Again, if you're still around, Kate, I think you are. It's reflecting that back. It's Peter, it sounds like you're convinced that I should be coming up with all the solutions as well. Convinced is the feeling that I should be coming up with the solutions as well. Is the what about. So this reflecting back, checking out people's assumptions, and sometimes also saying, hey, look, I'm really frustrated because you're dumping it all on me. You're expecting me to come up with everything. I think that is everything. So wonderful. Thank you so much for joining. Look out for the 2-minute model, and also the blog will be out about 2 weeks after that. All the best and have a great weekend.